5 a.m., dark outside. The phone on the nightstand showing a time that your body calls unreasonable. No one watching, no accountability partner, no reward waiting on the other side of the next 30 minutes, except the quiet and the work and the slow accumulation of something you cannot photograph. You've seen the videos, the cold water, the journal, the sunrise. That's not what this is about. This is about what actually happens inside your brain in the first 90 minutes after an early wake, before the notifications start, before the day's demands arrive, before the world gets its hands on your attention. There is a specific neurological window that early rising opens. Most people who talk about 5 a.m. have never named it precisely. What happens inside it is not motivational. It is biological. And once you understand the mechanism, the alarm becomes a different object entirely. Logan doesn't run on enthusiasm. He never has. What makes him function across decades of the hardest possible conditions isn't optimism or morning routine content. It's the understanding, carved out through pure, accumulated repetition, that showing up in the dark is the only variable he actually controls. The science of what that repetition does to the brain is what most 5 a.m. videos will never get to. This one does. In the first hour after waking, cortisol levels in the body reach their natural daily peak. This is not the stress cortisol of a crisis. This is the alerting cortisol of a system coming online. It sharpens focus, elevates mood slightly, and primes the brain for the kind of effortful, original thinking that becomes exponentially harder as the day progresses and decision fatigue accumulates. The brain's prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for planning, self-regulation, and sustained concentration, is most available in this window. Not because of the hour itself, but because it has not yet been depleted by the constant low-level decision-making that runs through every waking hour of a normal day. Every email answered, every choice made, every interruption processed draws from the same reservoir. At 5 a.m., that reservoir is full. By 2 p.m., in most people, it is running low. What you do with the full reservoir determines the quality of everything built from it. And what Logan understood, not consciously, not philosophically, just through the blunt repetition of hard years, is that the body performs differently before the world arrives than after it. The morning is not a ritual, it is a biological condition, and the question of whether you access it is entirely determined by one decision the night before. The 5 a.m. alarm does not feel like a neurological advantage. It feels like an assault. The body's internal clock, when adjusted toward an earlier wake time, takes between 1 and 3 weeks of consistency before the transition feels anything other than punishing. During that window, you will be tired. You will question whether this is worth it. The morning will not feel quiet and productive. It will feel dark and hostile, and like a decision made by a version of you that didn't understand what it was agreeing to. Stay with this, because what most people do in that 3-week window is exactly what kills the habit before the brain has had time to adapt to it. And the mechanism behind why is what separates the people who make this permanent from the ones who quit by Wednesday. The brain adapts its circadian rhythm through consistent light exposure and consistent wake time, not through willpower applied to a single alarm. The 5 a.m. that feels impossible in week 1 feels unremarkable by week 4, not because you've become more disciplined, but because the brain has literally recalibrated its internal clock to expect waking at that time. The discipline is not maintaining the habit. The discipline is surviving the 3 weeks before the biology takes over. Logan doesn't heal because healing is easy. He heals because the system was built to repair itself, if you give it enough repetitions to activate. A man who wakes at 5 a.m. consistently for 60 days has not transformed his personality. He has changed a single upstream variable that restructures almost everything downstream. The protected morning hour, the one that existed before anyone else arrived, before the phone demanded anything, before the day had a direction imposed on it from outside, compounds differently than hours reclaimed from the end of the day. End of day hours are spent hours. They are what remains after the reservoir has been drawn on all day. Morning hours are unspent. They are the reservoir itself, and the work done in them, the thinking, the building, the hard problem that requires the full prefrontal cortex, carries a quality that the same work done at 9 p.m. on an empty tank cannot replicate. This is not philosophy. This is the arithmetic of cognitive resources applied honestly to a 24-hour day. The man who gets to the hard work first, when the brain is fresh, is not working harder than the man who gets to it last. He is working with a fundamentally different instrument. Over 60 days, that difference is not small. It is not even close. You came into this thinking 5 a.m. was about discipline, about identity, about being the kind of person who wakes up early, because that's what serious people do. 5 a.m. is not a personality. It is an access decision. It is the choice to reach the brain's peak cognitive window before it gets consumed by everything that was going to consume it anyway. The discipline is not the early wake. The discipline is protecting what you do with the window once it's open, because an early alarm followed by an hour of scrolling is not a morning practice. It is an expensive nap interruption. The alarm is the door. What matters is whether you walk through it toward the one thing that requires your best thinking, or whether you let the window close the same way it always has, scrolled away before it had a chance to become anything. Tomorrow morning, before you set the alarm, answer one question. What is the single thing that deserves the best version of your brain? Not the most urgent thing, the most important one. The thing that has been getting your leftover hours and producing leftover results because of it. Set the alarm. Set it for real. And when it goes off, do that one thing first, before the phone. Before the phone, before the news, before any input arrives from outside. Give the full reservoir to the work that deserves it most. The rest of the day will still happen. The emails will still be there. The demands will arrive on schedule. Logan didn't survive by being the strongest or the fastest. He survived by showing up in the dark before anyone else was ready and doing the thing that needed doing with what he had. Not because it was easy, because the repetition itself was the point. 60 mornings, same time, same first move. That's not a routine. That's a different brain. 5 a.m. doesn't make you disciplined. It gives you the brain you need to do the work that discipline is actually for. One question. What is the thing that keeps getting your leftover hours that deserves your first ones? Name it in the comments. One line. That answer is your alarm.